Blood trickled down Alexis Morgan's face as she stared at the unconscious officers sprawled across her living room floor. The surveillance footage in her hand would expose everything. She never wanted this fight, but when they kicked down her door, they forgot one crucial detail: she spent 15 years as an Army Ranger. Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice and courage, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow Alexis's journey from targeted victim to powerful advocate. How would you react if armed officers suddenly stormed your home without warning? Let's find out what happened next in this incredible true story of one woman's fight against corruption. Alexis Morgan pulled her sleek black SUV into the driveway of her colonial-style home in Westlake, a pristine suburban community 20 minutes outside Atlanta. At 43, the retired Army Ranger carried herself with the same disciplined posture that had defined her 15 years of military service. Her morning had been pleasantly routine, a 5-mile jog through the neighborhood, followed by a visit to her elderly mother at Sunshine Acres Nursing Home. Alexis checked her watch, still enough time to review client files before her afternoon video conference. As a cybersecurity consultant for major corporations, her expertise in digital protection systems kept her in high demand. The late September sun warmed her dark skin as she collected grocery bags from the trunk, nodding politely to Mrs. Peterson watering plants next door. Despite living in Westlake for 5 years, Alexis remained acutely aware of being one of only 7 black homeowners in the 200-house community. The suspicious glances hadn't stopped, nor had the occasional uncomfortable encounters at community meetings. Just last week, Wallace Thompson, the white 60-something head of the Homeowners Association, had cornered her at the mailboxes to discuss maintaining certain neighborhood standards after she'd painted her front door a deep burgundy. Alexis had merely smiled politely, reminding him that the color was pre-approved by the architectural committee before walking away. Inside her immaculately kept home, Alexis arranged her groceries and prepared a light lunch of grilled chicken salad. Family photos lined her hallway: her parents at their 40th anniversary, her brother James with his wife and twin daughters, and several from her military days, including one with her unit before their final deployment. After lunch, Alexis changed into comfortable clothes and settled at her home office desk, surrounded by 3 computer monitors, displaying complex security protocols. At 4:30, she connected to a video call with James, a financial analyst in Chicago. Their conversation drifted from their mother's declining health to potential care options. The doctor says she might need more specialized care soon. Alexis explained, brushing a lock of her shoulder-length braids behind her ear. The medication adjustment hasn't improved her memory issues. James sighed his concern, evident even through the screen. We might need to look at memory care facilities. Have you talked to Catherine about recommendations before Alexis could respond? A thunderous pounding shook her front door. She frowned, checking the security app on her phone. Strangely, the doorbell camera showed no video feed. "Someone's at the door," she told James. "Let me check what's going on." The pounding intensified, accompanied by shouting. Alexis moved cautiously toward her entryway years of tactical training, automatically assessing potential threats. Suddenly, a deafening crash sent splinters of wood flying as her front door burst inward off its hinges. 6 police officers stormed into her home, weapons drawn, and aimed directly at her. "Police, get on the ground now," a white officer with a crew cut shouted. "Hands where we can see them," another yelled simultaneously. Alexis froze, her mind racing to understand what was happening. "Officers, what's this about?" she asked calmly, slowly raising her hands to show compliance. Her eyes quickly assessed the situation. 6 officers, all but one white standard police tactical formation. No visible identification. "I said on the ground," the lead officer barked, advancing toward her. "I'll comply, but I'd like to see your warrant, please." Alexis responded, maintaining her composure while dropping carefully to her knees. "Shut up and get down." The officer, whose name tag read Cantrell, grabbed her shoulder roughly and shoved her face first onto the hardwood floor. The impact split her lip, blood spattering onto the polished surface. "We have a warrant for drug trafficking." Officer Cantrell stated, pressing his knee into her back while another officer handcuffed her wrists painfully tight behind her back. The metal cut into her skin, causing her right wrist to bleed. "There must be a mistake," Alexis said. "I'm a cybersecurity consultant with government clearance. Could I please see the warrant?" Cantrell ignored her request as the other officers began ransacking her home. From her position on the floor, Alexis could hear drawers being emptied, furniture overturned, and items crashing to the ground. Her military training kept her breathing steady, despite the adrenaline surging through her system. She noticed that her video call with James was still active on her laptop, now knocked sideways on the coffee table. Her brother was witnessing everything. "Officer, I have the right to see your warrant and identification," Alexis stated more firmly. Cantrell yanked her up by the handcuffs, sending sharp pain through her shoulders. "You people always know your rights when it's convenient," he sneered. "We got an anonymous tip about drug activity. Very reliable source." Alexis noticed a female officer standing back from the others, looking uncomfortable with the situation. Her name tag read Rodriguez. "Your source is mistaken," Alexis replied evenly. "I've never been involved with drugs. I work in cybersecurity and have government security clearance." One of the officers called from the kitchen, "Nothing in here, Cantrell." Alexis watched as Cantrell nodded subtly to another officer who moved toward the kitchen. Through the doorway, she glimpsed him, reaching into his pocket and placing a small bag in her kitchen drawer when he thought no one was looking. Her stomach nodded with understanding. This was a setup. Cantrell noticed her line of sight and stepped forward, blocking her view. "What are you looking at?" he demanded, his face inches from hers. "Nothing, officer," she replied, keeping her voice neutral despite her racing heart. Cantrell glanced at the laptop and saw the active video call. "What's this? Who are you communicating with?" He moved toward the computer. "That's my brother Alexis," explained. "We were talking when you arrived." Cantrell reached for the laptop. "Well, we'll just disconnect this. Don't need you calling for backup, do we?" As his hand moved to close the laptop, potentially destroying evidence of what was really happening, Alexis realized she had seconds to make a critical decision. With the planted drugs and the officer's behavior, she understood with crystal clarity that this situation could end with her imprisoned or worse. She had survived 3 combat tours by trusting her instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that her life was in danger. Adrenaline surged through Alexis's body as Officer Cantrell reached for her laptop. 15 years of Army Ranger training had conditioned her muscles to respond instantly to threats, and despite the handcuffs restricting her movement, her mind calculated angles and vulnerabilities with military precision. "Please don't touch my property without a warrant," she stated firmly, shifting her weight almost imperceptibly to establish better balance. Cantrell turned toward her with a sneer. "You giving orders now?" he asked, stepping closer with intentional intimidation. "I don't need a warrant to secure potential evidence." In that moment, Alexis made her decision. As Cantrell extended his arm toward the laptop again, she executed a lightning-fast maneuver that her Ranger instructors had drilled into muscle memory. Despite her handcuffed wrists, she dropped her center of gravity and pivoted her entire body, sweeping Cantrell's legs with a precise kick to his lateral knee. The officer cried out in shock as his leg buckled unnaturally. Before he could regain balance, Alexis had already spun behind him, using his momentum against him. With her shoulder, she drove him forward into the wall, stunning him momentarily. The 5 remaining officers reacted immediately, reaching for their weapons. "Stop, or we'll shoot," one shouted, while another lunged forward to tackle her. Alexis had survived firefights in Baghdad and Kandahar by making split-second decisions. She ducked under the charging officer's outstretched arms, driving her shoulder into his solar plexus with calculated force, enough to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. The officer doubled over, gasping for breath. 2 more officers converged on her simultaneously from different angles. Alexis used the handcuffed officers as a momentary shield while assessing the room's geometry. A tall officer with a shaved head grabbed for her arm, but Alexis had already anticipated the move. She dropped to one knee, leveraging her body weight to flip him over her shoulder. His momentum carried him into a glass coffee table which shattered under his weight. Officer Cantrell had recovered enough to draw his taser. "You're dead now. You crazy," he began, but Alexis had already closed the distance between them. With a precisely targeted kick to his wrist, she sent the taser flying across the room. In the same fluid motion, she headbutted him with controlled force, targeting the nasal bridge. Blood spurted as he collapsed backward, momentarily incapacitated. The fourth officer, a heavyset man with a mustache, managed to grab her from behind in a bear hug. Alexis relaxed momentarily, making him think he'd succeeded before suddenly tensing every muscle in her core. Using his grip as leverage, she threw her legs upward and drove her heels into the approaching fifth officer's chest, sending him staggering backward into the entertainment center. Simultaneously, she snapped her head backward, connecting with the bridge of the heavyset officer's nose. His grip loosened instantly as he howled in pain. Throughout the confrontation, Alexis noticed that Officer Rodriguez, the only female officer present, had maintained her distance, her hand hovering uncertainly over her weapon without drawing it. As the heavyset officer stumbled backward, clutching his bleeding nose, Rodriguez and a young officer were the only two left standing. Rodriguez slowly lowered her weapon, her eyes communicating what appeared to be understanding or perhaps even tacit approval. The young officer, his nameplate read Bell, looked barely out of the academy. His hands trembled as he pointed his taser at Alexis. "Don't move," he shouted, his voice cracking with nervous energy. "Stay where you are," Alexis remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled, despite the exertion. "Officer Bell," she said calmly, reading his nameplate, "you need to understand what's happening here. Your colleagues planted evidence in my home. This is not a legitimate operation." Bell's eyes darted nervously to Rodriguez, then back to Alexis. "I said don't move." Rodriguez finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Bell, something's not right here. The warrant paperwork was incomplete. I tried to tell Cantrell before we left the station." Bell's uncertainty was palpable, his weapon wavering slightly. Taking advantage of his momentary distraction, Alexis executed a sideways roll that brought her within range of his legs. Before he could react, she swept his feet from under him with a precise leg movement. As he fell, she managed to position herself to strike a precise point on his neck that would temporarily render him unconscious without causing permanent damage. Bell collapsed beside her, the taser clattering to the floor beside him. Within 60 seconds of Cantrell's first move toward the laptop, 5 officers lay incapacitated around Alexis's living room. Only Rodriguez remained standing, her weapon now completely lowered. Alexis met her eyes with a level gaze. "Are you going to shoot me, Officer Rodriguez?" Rodriguez slowly holstered her weapon. "This wasn't supposed to go down like this," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Alexis asked, her senses still on high alert. Before Rodriguez could answer, Alexis noticed movement from Cantrell, who was reaching for his backup weapon. With a quick kick, she rendered him fully unconscious, then addressed Rodriguez again. "I need you to uncuff me right now. Your colleagues planted drugs in my kitchen drawer. I need to secure that evidence before more officers arrive." Rodriguez hesitated, clearly weighing her options. "How do I know you won't attack me too?" "Because I could have done so already," Alexis replied evenly. "I've neutralized threats, not created new ones. These officers will all recover. But I need to protect myself from whatever setup this is." After a moment's consideration, Rodriguez retrieved keys from Cantrell's belt and cautiously approached Alexis. "I knew something was off about this raid," she admitted quietly as she unlocked the handcuffs. "Cantrell said the warrant came through special channels. I never actually saw a judge's signature." As the handcuffs fell away, Alexis rubbed her bleeding wrists. "Thank you," she said, immediately moving to check the officer's vital signs. All were stable, though several would wake with significant pain. She quickly secured their weapons, removing ammunition and placing them on a high shelf. "We need to call this in," Rodriguez said, reaching for her radio. 5 officers down." "Wait," Alexis said, moving quickly to the kitchen. She retrieved the planted bag using a dish towel to preserve fingerprints, then sealed it in a clean freezer bag from her drawer. "Now we can call it in. But first I need to secure video evidence." She moved to the laptop where James was still watching in stunned silence. "James? Did you record that?" she asked urgently. "Every second," he confirmed, "already backed up to our secure cloud server." Alexis nodded with grim satisfaction. Good. Send copies to Maya immediately. She turned back to Rodriguez. Now you can call it in. Tell them officers are down but stable and the situation is contained. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. You're incredibly calm for someone who just took down 5 police officers. 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, Alexis replied, retrieving a first aid kit from a cabinet. This isn't my first tactical situation. She began treating the officers' injuries, applying pressure to bleeding wounds and placing them in recovery positions. But it's certainly the first time I've had to defend myself, in my own living room, against people who are supposed to protect and serve. As Rodriguez reported the situation on her radio, Alexis secured the scene methodically. She knew that within minutes her home would be swarming with police backup, and she would face serious accusations. The evidence she'd gathered might save her from immediate charges, but she harbored no illusions about what was coming. She had just physically confronted representatives of a system that too often viewed black bodies as inherently threatening. Even with justification, she knew the storm that would follow would test every ounce of her formidable strength. As sirens wailed in the distance, Alexis took a deep breath and steeled herself for the battle ahead. The military had taught her that sometimes the most dangerous moment comes after you think the firefight is over. She suspected that taking down these officers was just the opening skirmish in a much larger war. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the stark interrogation room as Alexis sat perfectly straight, her military posture intact despite 20 hours in custody. The metal chair was deliberately uncomfortable, the room temperature uncomfortably. Cold, classic interrogation tactics she recognized from her military training. Her split lip had stopped bleeding, but dried blood still crusted at the corner of her mouth, and the abrasions on her wrists from the tight handcuffs had begun to form angry red scabs. The door swung open, and a tall, broad-shouldered white man in his 50s entered, carrying a thin file folder. Captain Howard Reeves had cold gray eyes that had seen decades of police work, with deep lines etched around them that spoke more of scowls than smiles. "Miss Morgan," he said, his voice a gravelly baritone that filled the small room. "You've created quite a situation for yourself." Alexis remained silent, maintaining steady eye contact. Reeves slapped the folder onto the metal table and took a seat across from her, assaulting 6 police officers, resisting arrest, possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. "You're looking at 25 years minimum, Miss Morgan." "Captain Reeves," Alexis replied calmly. "We both know those officers entered my home illegally, used excessive force and planted evidence. My brother witnessed everything on a video call that has been secured by my attorney." Reeves's expression didn't change. "A convenient story. But we have 6 officers with injuries, a valid warrant, and drugs found in your possession. Who do you think a jury will believe? 6 decorated officers or 1 angry black woman with a violent history?" Alexis raised an eyebrow. "Violent history. I served my country with honor for 15 years. 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star hardly constitute a violent history. Military training that you used against police officers," Reeves countered, opening the folder. "The DA is pushing for maximum charges. Domestic terrorism is even on the table given your combat skills and apparent anti-police sentiment." The door opened again, and a young white man in an ill-fitting suit entered. "Sorry I'm late," he said, extending his hand to Alexis. "Timothy Walsh, your court-appointed attorney." The handshake was limp, his palm slightly sweaty. Reeves nodded to Walsh. "I was just explaining to Miss Morgan the seriousness of her situation." Walsh cleared his throat nervously. "Yes, well, I've reviewed the preliminary charges. Miss Morgan, I think our best approach would be to negotiate a plea. If you express remorse and plead guilty to reduced charges, we might get the sentence down to 8 to 10 years. Alexis stared at Walsh for a long moment before turning back to Reeves. "Captain, I'd like a moment alone with my attorney." Reeves stood his chair, scraping loudly against the concrete floor. "Take your time. The arraignment is scheduled for 4 o'clock. Judge Wilson doesn't appreciate delays." After Reeves left, Alexis fixed her gaze on Walsh. "Mr. Walsh, you're fired." The young lawyer blinked rapidly. "You can't just fire me. The court appointed me to your case. and I'm declining your representation," Alexis replied firmly. "I'll be calling my own attorney." Walsh's face flushed. "Miss Morgan, I don't think you understand the gravity." "I understand perfectly," Alexis interrupted. "What I need is an attorney who doesn't start by assuming my guilt. Please leave now." After Walsh departed, Alexis was permitted one phone call. She dialed a number from memory. Maya Washington answered a crisp, professional voice. "Maya, it's Alexis Morgan. I need your help." 4 hours later, Alexis stood in a crowded courtroom beside Maya Washington, a formidable black woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Maya had served as a JAG officer before transitioning to civilian practice as a civil rights attorney. They had met during Alexis's second tour in Afghanistan, forming a friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences as black women in predominantly male military environments. Judge Carlton Wilson peered down from the bench, his jowls hanging over his collar, his expression one of practiced severity. At 68, he had a reputation for being tough on crime, a phrase Alexis knew often translated to harsh sentences for black defendants. "Bail, Your Honor," Maya stated confidently. "My client has deep ties to this community, no prior criminal record, and a distinguished military service record. She poses no flight risk." The prosecutor, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, shook his head. "Your Honor, the defendant attacked 6 police officers, sending all of them to the hospital. She clearly presents a danger to the community, particularly to law enforcement. The state requests remand." Judge Wilson barely glanced at the defense table before pronouncing bail denied. "The defendant will be remanded to custody until trial." As corrections officers approached to lead her away, Alexis noticed Officer Rodriguez standing at the back of the courtroom, her expression troubled. Their eyes met briefly before Alexis was escorted through a side door. The county jail was a crash course in systemic inequality. Alexis observed how differently black women were treated compared to white inmates, from harsher reprimands for minor infractions to less access to basic necessities like sanitary products. Her military experience helped her adapt to the rigid routines and Spartan conditions, but she witnessed many women struggling with the dehumanizing environment. Meanwhile, the local media portrayed Alexis as a dangerous drug dealer who had violently attacked police. Headlines screamed about officer beatdown and drug traffickers' violent resistance. Only one independent journalist, Darren Winters from the Atlanta Community Voice, questioned the official narrative, pointing out inconsistencies in the police report. 2 weeks into her pre-trial detention, Maya visited with troubling news. "Someone broke into your house last night," she said quietly across the visitation table. "They're calling it a gas leak that caused an explosion. But your neighbor's security camera caught men in unmarked vans entering before it happened. Most of your personal belongings were destroyed." Alexis absorbed this information with outward calm, though her mind raced. "They're destroying evidence," she concluded. "What about the cloud server with the video safe?" Maya confirmed. "James secured it with military-grade encryption. But this confirms what we suspected. Powerful people want you silenced." Alexis leaned forward. "Maya, I need you to contact Eleanor Hayes, my former commanding officer. She has connections that might help us understand who's behind this." As days turned into weeks, Alexis built a routine in jail, exercising in her cell, mediating conflicts between inmates, and even organizing an informal legal education group to help women understand their rights. Guards initially viewed her with hostility, but some began to show grudging respect for her discipline and the positive influence she had on other inmates. Maya worked tirelessly on her case filing motions, challenging the warrant's validity and demanding access to body camera footage, which the department claimed had been corrupted during the incident. Then came a breakthrough. James had preserved the entire video call, showing the officer's illegal entry, excessive force, and the planting of evidence. Armed with this proof, Maya secured an emergency hearing. Judge Wilson was forced to release Alexis on house arrest with an ankle monitor, though his displeasure was evident in his scowling demeanor. The video evidence, while showing potential procedural irregularities, does not conclusively prove officer misconduct, he stated for the record. The defendant will remain under strict electronic monitoring until trial. Returning to her vandalized home was a shock, despite Maya's warning. The gas leak had blown out windows and damaged walls. Many of her possessions were destroyed or missing, including family photos and military commendations. Most concerning her home office had been completely ransacked with all electronic devices gone. As Alexis surveyed the damage, the reality of her situation crystallized with cold clarity. This wasn't just about a mistaken raid or overzealous officers. Someone powerful wanted her silenced, discredited, or imprisoned. The question was, why target her specifically? What had she unwittingly stumbled into? Do you agree that our justice system treats people differently based on race? Comment number 1. If you believe Alexis is being railroaded because she's a black woman standing up to corrupt authority, hit that like button. If you're outraged by the planted evidence and destroyed property, and subscribe right now to see how deep this conspiracy goes. What would you do if you were in Alexis's position, watching everything you've worked for being systematically destroyed? How far would you go to expose the truth? Let's find out what Alexis discovers next as she begins to unravel the real reason behind this targeted attack. The ankle monitor chafed against Alexis's skin as she methodically pieced together the puzzle of what had happened to her. Maya had secured a temporary restraining order, allowing her to recover and preserve evidence from her damaged home, though police technicians had supervised the process, limiting what she could access. Sitting at her kitchen table, now scarred with burn marks from the gas leak, Alexis spread out documents and notes, creating a timeline of events. Her years as a ranger had taught her that understanding the enemy's pattern of operations was crucial to survival. Using a burner phone Maya had provided, she began researching the officers involved in the raid. Officer Derek Cantrell, the aggressive crew cut leader, had 8 excessive force complaints in his 11-year career, all against people of color, all dismissed without disciplinary action. Officers Thomas Brennan and Kevin Mills, also involved in the raid, had similar records. Officer Michael Bell, the nervous rookie, had only 9 months on the force. Most interesting was Officer Lisa Rodriguez, the only officer who had shown hesitation during the raid. Her record was clean, with commendations for community policing initiatives. A pattern began to emerge, but Alexis needed more information. Having temporarily lost access to her sophisticated cybersecurity tools, she turned to an old military friend, Marcus Chen, a former intelligence officer now working in private security. "Need to run some names discreetly," she texted from the burner phone. "Operational security compromised. Urgent." Chen's response came within minutes. "Secure line established. Proceed." Over the next several days, Alexis expanded her investigation beyond the officers to Westlake itself. The suburban community had undergone significant demographic changes in recent years. Property records showed that in the past 3 years, 7 black homeowners had sold their properties and moved away, all after encounters with local police responding to anonymous complaints. Each incident followed a similar pattern: minor allegations, aggressive police response, followed by homeowners selling quickly, often below market value. Most disturbing was where those properties ended up. Using Marcus's secure system to access real estate transaction records, Alexis discovered that all 7 homes had been purchased by shell companies that traced back to a single entity, Westlake Development Group. After renovations, the properties had been resold at significant profits to white families. Alexis's brother James, leveraging his financial analysis background, helped her trace the money flows. "These aren't just house flips," he explained during a secure video call. "They're using the properties to launder money from other operations. Buy low from intimidated black homeowners, renovate with inflated contractor invoices, sell high to approved buyers. Classic wealth extraction and community reshaping." Alexis noted that Wallace Thompson, the Homeowners Association president, who had hassled her about her burgundy door, sat on Westlake Development's board of directors. Her investigation took a dramatic turn when Officer Rodriguez made anonymous contact through Maya. "Can't talk long," Rodriguez said, her voice tense on the recorded call Maya played for Alexis. "The warrant for Morgan's house was bogus. No judge ever signed it. Cantrell said it came through special channels, and to keep it quiet. When I questioned it, I was told to shut up or find a new precinct. Rodriguez had provided copies of internal documents showing the warrant lacked proper judicial authorization and was based on a fabricated confidential informant. The evidence was compelling but still circumstantial. Alexis needed access to police records to connect all the dots. Maya filed formal records requests for documentation related to police calls in Westlake, particularly those involving minority residents. The requests disappeared into bureaucratic limbo, delayed by processing backlogs and technical issues. Frustrated by the stonewalling, Alexis decided on a more direct approach. Using her limited house arrest mobility, she arranged to meet a former Westlake resident, Tasha Williams, who had sold her home after police responded to complaints about unauthorized gatherings when she hosted her church group. They came 3 times in 2 weeks, Tasha explained nervously, glancing around the coffee shop where they met, each time more aggressive. Last time they handcuffed my 17-year-old son on the front lawn because he matched a suspect description. After that, my husband said we had to leave. We lost nearly $80,000 selling so quickly. Alexis connected with 5 other former residents with similar stories. A pattern of intimidation emerged: excessive police responses to minor complaints or anonymous tips, followed by escalating harassment until families felt unsafe enough to sell. The next day, Alexis received an unexpected visitor. Detective Marcus Green, a heavy-set man with cold eyes, knocked on her door, 2 uniformed officers flanking him. "Miss Morgan," he said, not waiting for an invitation before stepping into her living room. "I understand you've been asking questions about police activity in Westlake." Alexis maintained a neutral expression. "I'm preparing my defense, detective. That's my right." Green smiled without warmth. "Of course. But harassing former residents, making false accusations against respected officers, that could be construed as witness tampering, maybe even obstruction of justice." His eyes drifted to a photo of her mother that had survived the house damage. "Your mother's at Sunshine Acres nursing home, isn't she? Nice place. Shame if there were complications with her care. Nursing homes have so many regulations they need to follow." The threat hung in the air between them. Green continued, "Maybe focus on your own legal troubles, Miss Morgan. Some investigations are better left to professionals." After they left, Alexis sat perfectly still, controlling her breathing the way she'd been taught in ranger training. The threat against her mother confirmed she was on the right track, and that powerful people felt threatened by her investigation. She immediately called Maya to arrange additional security for her mother and to document the intimidation attempt. That evening, as Alexis reviewed her notes, a notification pinged on her secure messaging app. Officer Rodriguez had sent another message. "Found something. Evidence lockup records don't match warrant inventory. Items seized from your home never officially logged. Detective Green ordered everything held in his personal locker." This information strengthened Alexis's suspicion that the raid was never about drugs. It was about removing her from her home, just like the other black residents who had been pushed out. But why the urgency? What made her property so valuable that they'd risk such a blatantly illegal operation? The answer came from an unexpected source. Her neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, who had initially seemed wary of Alexis, knocked on her door late that evening. "I shouldn't be here," the elderly woman said nervously, glancing over her shoulder. "But what they're doing isn't right." She handed Alexis a folded community newsletter. Last page. The development plan. "Your house sits on what they're calling the gateway parcel. They can't start construction without it." The newsletter outlined Westlake Development Group's Neighborhood Renewal Initiative, a $20 million project featuring luxury townhomes and a private members-only recreation center. The planned development centered exactly where the recently acquired properties were located, with Alexis's home designated as the main entrance location. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Alexis wasn't targeted randomly. Her property was the key to a multi-million-dollar development that could only proceed if all the parcels were acquired. The harassment, the raid, the planted evidence, all were tactics to force her out cheaply, just like the others. As she pieced together this revelation, Alexis heard a loud beeping from her ankle monitor. The display flashed red, indicating a violation, though she hadn't left her permitted area. She immediately called her monitoring officer. "There must be a malfunction," she explained. "I'm at home exactly where I'm supposed to be. System shows you're 3 miles from your approved location," the officer replied skeptically. "That's a direct violation of your release conditions." Alexis felt a chill run through her. "It's being tampered with," she realized. "Someone's setting me up again." She quickly took photos documenting her location and called Maya, who promised to file an emergency motion with the court. As she ended the call, Alexis heard police sirens approaching. They were coming for her again, and this time they'd claim she had violated her release conditions. The trap was elegantly simple, but Alexis Morgan hadn't survived 3 combat tours by being easy prey. As blue lights flashed outside her window, she steeled herself for the next phase of the battle. They wanted her land, but they had drastically underestimated her determination. This wasn't just about one house anymore. It was about exposing a system of corruption and discrimination that had victimized an entire community. Despite Maya's swift legal intervention proving the ankle monitor malfunction, Judge Wilson had placed Alexis under stricter house arrest conditions, requiring twice-daily check-ins with her probation officer and restricting all visitors except her attorney. These limitations didn't deter Alexis. They only confirmed she was uncovering something significant enough to provoke increasingly desperate countermeasures. Working within these new constraints, Alexis expanded her investigation by creating a secure digital network connecting former Westlake residents, allowing them to share information while protecting their identities. Through this network, patterns emerged that pointed to a corruption much deeper than individual police officers or a greedy development company. Tasha Williams revealed that Judge Carlton Wilson had dismissed a harassment complaint she'd filed against the Homeowners Association before her family was forced to sell. Another former resident, Marcus Jefferson, shared that his home insurance had been mysteriously canceled after he spoke at a community meeting opposing new development plans with the only replacement policy offered at triple the previous purchase rate. Using her cybersecurity expertise, Alexis created a secure evidence repository where these testimonies were documented and cross-referenced, establishing a timeline of systemic intimidation stretching back nearly 5 years. With James's financial analysis assistance, she traced a web of connections between Westlake Development Group county officials and the local police department. Campaign finance records obtained through a friendly clerk at the county elections office showed that Judge Wilson had received substantial donations from Westlake Development executives during his re-election campaign. The police department's foundation, which funded equipment and officer bonuses, had received over $300,000 from the same sources in the past 3 years. Alexis needed to understand who was coordinating these efforts. Her breakthrough came when Maya used legal discovery in the criminal case to obtain personnel records for the officers involved in her raid. Captain Howard Reeves had served in the military police 30 years earlier in the same unit as Franklin Moss, now Westlake Development's head of security. Moss had been dishonorably discharged, following allegations of prisoner abuse that were later reduced through what the records cryptically called command intervention. Following this lead, Marcus Chen uncovered that Detective Marcus Green, who had threatened Alexis's mother, had received unexplained deposits to his offshore account, coinciding with each property acquisition in Westlake. The amounts varied between $15,000 and $20,000, always within days of black homeowners selling under duress. This information was explosive but still circumstantial. Alexis needed hard evidence, connecting the police actions directly to Westlake Development's property acquisition strategy. She arranged a meeting with Darren Winters, the independent journalist who had questioned the official narrative about her arrest. "There's a systematic effort to drive black homeowners out of Westlake," she explained, sharing sanitized versions of her findings. "I need someone to investigate the financial connections between the police department and Westlake Development without the constraints I'm under." Winters, a dedicated investigative reporter with thinning hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers, recognized the significance of the story. "This could be huge," he said, scribbling notes. "Institutional racism, police corruption, real estate fraud, possible RICO violations. I'll need to protect my sources, but I can start digging into the financial angles immediately." The next morning, Maya arrived at Alexis's house with grim news. Darren Winters had been severely beaten by unknown assailants outside his apartment building. His laptop had been stolen, but curiously his wallet and phone were left untouched. The message was clear. Someone powerful wanted to stop this investigation. "He's in stable condition," Maya reported. "But he'll be hospitalized for weeks, multiple fractures, concussion." Alexis absorbed this information with outward calm, though inwardly her anger intensified. "They're escalating," she noted. "Which means we're getting closer to something they're desperate to hide." Despite the warning, Alexis intensified her efforts. Using security footage from businesses near her home on the day of the raid, she identified a black SUV with tinted windows parked 1 block away. The vehicle matched one registered to Franklin Moss, Westlake Development's security director. More damning, she discovered through neighborhood gossip that Wallace Thompson, the Homeowners Association president, had reported her for suspicious activities multiple times in the weeks before the raid, despite having no evidence of wrongdoing. The connections were becoming clearer, but Alexis still needed definitive proof linking these disparate elements into a coherent conspiracy. Her opportunity came unexpectedly when Officer Bell, the rookie from the raid, contacted Maya through a burner phone. "I can't sleep anymore," he confessed, his voice shaky. "What they're doing is wrong. Detective Green ordered us to plant the drugs. Said it was part of a community improvement initiative, approved by Captain Reeves. I joined the force to help people, not to frame innocent homeowners." Bell agreed to meet secretly to provide a sworn statement, but the morning of the meeting, Maya received a text, "Can't make it. Being watched. Sorry." Hours later, the department announced Officer Bell had taken an extended medical leave for stress-related issues. Alexis suspected intimidation rather than coincidence. When Maya attempted to submit their findings to the district attorney's office requesting an independent investigation, they encountered another wall of resistance. The complaint was routed to a deputy DA who happened to be Judge Wilson's former law partner. He dismissed their evidence as speculative and suggested that pursuing such baseless accusations could result in sanctions against Maya for filing frivolous claims. That evening, Alexis received an alert from her home security system. The cameras showed no intruders, but when she checked the ankle monitor, it again showed her miles from her approved location. Within minutes, her phone rang, her probation officer warning her about another violation. "I haven't moved," Alexis insisted. "The equipment is being tampered with remotely." The officer seemed skeptical but agreed to send a technician the next day. Before hanging up, he added ominously, "Judge Wilson takes these violations very seriously, Miss Morgan. A second one typically results in immediate remand to custody." After the call, Alexis inspected the monitor more carefully and discovered a tiny modification to the circuit board. Someone had physically altered the device during its initial installation, allowing for remote manipulation of its GPS. Reporting. She documented the tampering with microphotographs, then began preparations for what she now recognized as inevitable, another attempt to return her to jail, this time potentially without bail. That night, Alexis barely slept her ranger training, keeping her alert to any sounds of approach. By dawn, she had consolidated her evidence into encrypted files accessible to James Maya and several trusted contacts if she were taken into custody. She also prepared an emergency motion documenting the monitor tampering ready for Maya to file the moment any new allegations surfaced. As she completed these preparations, Alexis reviewed everything she had learned. The pattern was now unmistakable: Westlake Development, in collaboration with corrupt police officials and with Judge Wilson's protection, had systematically targeted black homeowners for removal from the neighborhood. Their methods escalated from harassment to fabricated criminal charges when intimidation failed. The $20 million development project could only proceed once all targeted properties were acquired, with Alexis's home being the final piece. Her military training had taught her to identify the enemy's critical vulnerabilities. In this case, the conspiracy relied on secrecy and the isolation of victims. By connecting those victims and documenting the pattern, she had already undermined their operational security. Now she needed to force them into the open, where their actions would face public scrutiny. As morning light filtered through her curtains, Alexis made a tactical decision. Rather than merely defending against the next attack, she would set a trap of her own. She would leak information, suggesting she had found conclusive evidence linking the department to Westlake Development's illegal activities. Evidence she would only reveal in court. The bait would be irresistible to conspirators already desperate to silence her. When they moved against her again, she would be ready to expose everything. With grim determination, Alexis began implementing her counterattack. Years of combat had taught her that sometimes the best defense required taking the fight directly to the enemy. She was done being a victim. It was time to become the hunter. The pressure intensified as Alexis's court date approached. Her strategic leak about possessing damning evidence had the intended effect, provoking increasingly desperate countermoves from the conspiracy. First came a notice from her mother's nursing home, claiming sudden insurance coverage issues that might require relocation to a facility 50 miles away, effectively isolating her vulnerable parent. James reported that his twin daughters were experiencing unusual harassment at school, with teachers suddenly finding academic deficiencies requiring special meetings that conflicted with his work schedule. Most concerning, Maya received 3 separate bar complaints alleging ethical violations, all filed by clients she had never represented, all requiring immediate responses that diverted her attention from Alexis's case. "They're attacking on all fronts," Maya observed during a hurried legal visit, "trying to isolate you from support networks and distract your defense team." Alexis nodded grimly. Classic insurgent suppression tactics. "I saw similar approaches in Afghanistan. Target family, undermine professional credibility, create resource drains." Rather than becoming demoralized, Alexis adapted with military precision. She created comprehensive security protocols for her home, installing hidden cameras and microphones to document every interaction. James relocated his family temporarily to stay with his in-laws in another state, removing them as leverage points. For her mother, Alexis reached out to her former Ranger Unit members, several of whom lived in the Atlanta area. 2 agreed to provide discreet protection, taking shifts at the nursing home as visiting relatives to ensure no unauthorized transfers occurred. Meanwhile, her investigation continued to uncover disturbing connections. Property records revealed that Westlake Development was preparing for the final phase of their project, which required acquiring just 3 more properties, including Alexis's home. The timetable showed construction scheduled to begin within 60 days, explaining the escalating urgency of their efforts to remove her. More ominously, financial projections indicated the development company would face severe penalties from investors if the project faced further delays, placing millions of dollars at stake. One evening, Alexis received an unexpected text from a blocked number. "Need to talk. Information about Cantrell and Green. Not safe by phone." The message came with instructions for a meeting at Piedmont Park the following morning. Suspecting a trap, Alexis arranged countermeasures. She asked Maya to file motions, requiring her to appear at the courthouse for document review at exactly the same time, creating an ironclad alibi. Then she enlisted Marcus Chen to attend the meeting in her place, observing from a distance. The precaution proved warranted when Marcus photographed Detective Green and 2 plainclothes officers positioned around the meeting point, clearly planning to catch her violating her house arrest restrictions. 2 days later, a more legitimate contact emerged. Officer Rodriguez arranged a secure meeting through Maya's office, where attorney-client privilege would provide some protection. "They have a systematic protocol for targeting homeowners." Rodriguez revealed, her voice barely above a whisper, despite the privacy screening in Maya's office. "It's called community stabilization. Cantrell and Green get their orders directly from someone outside the department. I don't know who, but they use a dedicated phone for those communications." Rodriguez explained that officers were instructed to target specific homeowners with heightened scrutiny, responding aggressively to any complaints and actively looking for violations. The goal was clearly to make continued residence untenable for selected families. "I joined the force to help people," Rodriguez said, her eyes reflecting genuine distress. "Not to be part of some racist property grab. But officers who question these operations get transferred to the worst precincts or find themselves under internal affairs investigations for fabricated violations." She promised to provide documented evidence of the targeting protocol, arranging to deliver it the following week, after she returned from a scheduled training course. The meeting reinforced Alexis's understanding of the conspiracy's structure, but still didn't identify its ultimate leadership. The next morning brought shocking news. Officer Rodriguez had been involved in a single vehicle accident on her way to the training facility. Her car had inexplicably veered off a straight road and struck a concrete barrier. She was in critical condition at Atlanta Memorial Hospital with a traumatic brain injury not expected to regain consciousness for days, if at all. Alexis immediately suspected foul play but had no way to prove it. Still, the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. When she asked Maya to visit Rodriguez in the hospital to check for suspicious circumstances, they discovered that Detective Green had already established himself as a family representative controlling access to her room. When Alexis attempted to visit anyway, Green arranged to have her briefly detained for allegedly violating house arrest restrictions, even though she had received proper authorization for the hospital visit. During processing at the precinct, Alexis overheard a revealing conversation between two officers discussing an upcoming operation called Final Sweep, scheduled for the night before her trial. One officer mentioned clearing the remaining undesirables to prepare for groundbreaking. Though they spoke in coded language, the implication was clear: a coordinated action against the remaining black homeowners was imminent. Maya secured Alexis's release, but the incident confirmed they were running out of time. With her trial just 2 weeks away, Alexis made a tactical decision to accelerate her countermeasures. "We need to set a trap," she told Maya during a secure conversation in her home, with white noise generators preventing electronic eavesdropping. "They're planning something big before the trial. We need to be ready to catch them in the act." Together they formulated a strategy. Using her cybersecurity expertise, Alexis created digital breadcrumbs, suggesting she had secured devastating evidence against the conspiracy: financial records, recorded conversations, and sworn statements, all stored on an encrypted server that would automatically release everything to federal authorities and media outlets if she were detained again. In reality, while she had substantial evidence, the master file was a carefully crafted bluff designed to provoke action from the conspirators. The trap was set, but Alexis harbored no illusions about the danger. She was challenging powerful people with resources, influence, and a demonstrated willingness to use violence. As days passed, the pressure continued mounting. Her home's utilities experienced technical difficulties, with water, electricity, and internet service interrupting randomly. Delivery services suddenly couldn't find her address. Unknown vehicles parked near her home for hours, their occupants watching her movements. Through it all, Alexis maintained her disciplined routine, documenting every incident while preparing for the confrontation she knew was coming. 1 week before her trial, she received an unexpected call from Colonel Eleanor Hayes, her former commanding officer now working at the Pentagon. Morgan, the familiar voice, brought an immediate sense of security. "Got your message. Pulled some strings. You'll have visitors tomorrow. Answer your door at 0900 hours. Before Alexis could ask questions, Hayes disconnected. The next morning, precisely at 9, 2 individuals in conservative business attire arrived at her door. They presented credentials, identifying them as FBI agents, specializing in public corruption investigations. "Colonel Hayes suggested we might find your situation relevant to an ongoing inquiry," the female agent explained once they were inside. Alexis provided a detailed briefing on everything she had uncovered, from the targeted harassment of black homeowners to the falsified warrant-planted evidence and the connections between police officials and Westlake Development. The agents listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed their familiarity with corruption investigations. "This aligns with certain patterns we've been monitoring," the male agent acknowledged. "But these cases are challenging to prove without inside documentation or recordings of explicit conversations about the conspiracy." Alexis understood the implication. Without someone like Officer Rodriguez providing direct testimony about receiving illegal orders or recordings of the conspirators discussing their actual intentions, the evidence remained circumstantial, compelling but potentially insufficient for federal charges. The visit ended with the agents providing secure contact information, but making no promises about intervention. That evening, as Alexis reviewed her security footage, she noticed something disturbing. During the FBI agent's visit, a vehicle matching Franklin Moss's SUV had driven past her house 3 times. Hours later, Detective Green had parked 2 blocks away and appeared to be photographing everyone entering or leaving her street. The conspiracy was monitoring her visitors, likely growing increasingly concerned about potential federal involvement. With just 5 days until her trial and the mysterious final sweep operation, Alexis faced a critical decision: continue gathering evidence while maintaining her defensive posture, or take more aggressive action to expose the conspiracy before they could implement their final plan. Her military training emphasized that when facing a superior force preparing a coordinated attack, sometimes the best option was a preemptive strike at their center of gravity. As night fell, Alexis made her decision. She would force the conspirators to reveal themselves by convincing them she had already secured their most damaging secrets and was prepared to expose everything. The gambit carried enormous risk. If they believed her bluff, they might abandon legal pretenses entirely and resort to more direct methods of silencing her. But if she succeeded, their desperate actions might provide exactly the explicit evidence the FBI needed to intervene. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been targeted by someone powerful just for being who you are? Comment number 1. If you've experienced discrimination or prejudice that made you feel unsafe in your own community, hit that like button. If you're amazed by Alexis's courage in fighting back against this corrupt system instead of just giving up, and subscribe right now to see her final plan unfold. What would you do if you discovered your own neighborhood had a secret plan to force out certain residents? Would you run for safety, or would you stand and fight like Alexis? The most dangerous part of her journey is just beginning as powerful enemies prepare their final move. Dawn broke over Alexis's neighborhood as she methodically checked her home's security systems. 4 days remained until her trial, and intelligence suggested the final sweep operation would occur within 48 hours. Her trap had been set digital breadcrumbs, suggesting she possessed recordings of Detective Green explicitly discussing the conspiracy with Westlake Development executives. Now she waited, watching for their response, while preparing for multiple contingencies. The first unexpected development came in the form of a hesitant knock at her back door mid-morning. Officer Michael Bell, the rookie from the initial raid, stood on her porch, constantly glancing over his shoulder. His normally clean-cut appearance had deteriorated, unshaven dark circles under bloodshot eyes, uniform slightly rumpled. "I shouldn't be here," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "They'd destroy me if they knew." Alexis assessed him carefully before inviting him inside, directing him to a corner where her hidden cameras could capture their conversation. "Why are you here, Officer Bell?" Bell's hands trembled slightly as he removed his cap. "I can't sleep anymore. What they're doing. It's not why I became a cop. Detective Green ordered us to plant those drugs in your home, said it was part of a community improvement initiative approved by Captain Reeves." He swallowed hard. "I joined to protect people, not frame innocent homeowners because of their race." The young officer revealed that the raid on Alexis's home had been planned without proper authorization. Green had briefed the team, emphasizing that Alexis was a priority target who needed to be removed from the community for neighborhood stability. Most damning, Bell had secretly recorded subsequent conversations where Green explicitly discussed targeting black homeowners to facilitate Westlake Development's acquisition plans. "I was raised to believe police stood for justice," Bell said, his voice cracking with emotion. "My father was an officer for 30 years. He'd be ashamed of what I've been part of." Bell provided a flash drive containing his recordings and agreed to sign a sworn affidavit detailing everything he'd witnessed. As he prepared to leave, he added, "Be careful. There's talk about making sure you don't make it to trial. Green says he has special assets ready to handle the situation." This confirmation of imminent danger accelerated Alexis's timeline. She immediately copied Bell's evidence to her secure server and arranged for Maya to take his formal statement that afternoon. Later that day, Alexis received a notification that Darren Winters, still recovering from his beating, had published an article in the Atlanta Community Voice exposing financial irregularities between the police department's foundation and Westlake development. While local mainstream media ignored the story, several national outlets picked it up, and social media amplification brought unexpected attention. By evening, Alexis's phone was ringing with journalists seeking comment. More significantly, Maya reported that the FBI agents who had visited earlier had requested copies of all evidence mentioned in Winter's article. The increased scrutiny seemed to rattle the conspiracy. Surveillance vehicles that had been constantly monitoring Alexis's home suddenly disappeared. Judge Wilson's office unexpectedly rescheduled pretrial motions, delaying them by 3 days, potentially disrupting the final sweep timeline. Colonel Hayes called again, this time offering more substantial assistance. "Got you some guardian angels, Morgan," she said cryptically, "and connections with people who can help navigate federal channels. This isn't just about one neighborhood anymore." Hayes connected Alexis with a Pentagon official investigating potential misuse of military surplus equipment by police departments, including excessive tactical gear deployed in civilian neighborhoods like Westlake. This opened another avenue for federal oversight that bypassed potentially compromised local authorities. As momentum built, Alexis organized a secure virtual meeting with several former Westlake residents who had been forced out. 10 families agreed to provide formal statements about their experiences, creating a documented pattern of harassment and intimidation. Their testimonies revealed consistent tactics, anonymous complaints leading to aggressive police responses followed by code violations, ticketing campaigns, and eventually fabricated criminal allegations, all preceding lowball offers from Westlake development representatives who promised to make the problems go away if they sold quickly. Just as things seemed to be turning in Alexis's favor, disaster struck. Her secure server was breached, despite sophisticated protections. Digital evidence began disappearing along with communications between team members. Marcus Chen determined the attack originated from a sophisticated operation using military-grade intrusion tools, resources far beyond typical police capabilities. More disturbingly, witnesses reported intimidation. 2 former residents withdrew their testimonies after receiving visits from code enforcement officials who found critical violations requiring immediate expensive repairs. Then came the devastating news. Officer Bell was found dead in his apartment from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. A typed note, allegedly in his handwriting, retracted all claims against the department and apologized for fabricating allegations due to personal problems. Alexis immediately recognized the hallmarks of a staged suicide. The timing was too convenient, and Bell had shown no suicidal tendencies during their meeting, just moral conviction and courage. Maya filed emergency motions, demanding an independent autopsy and preservation of evidence, but Judge Wilson assigned the case to the same medical examiner who routinely cleared officers in controversial shootings. With Bell silenced permanently, Alexis knew the conspiracy was escalating to its most dangerous phase. As she and Maya recalibrated their strategy, another complication emerged. During a team meeting at Maya's office, Alexis noticed subtle inconsistencies in information flow. Certain plans known only to their inner circle were being countered before implementation. The pattern suggested a security breach. Someone close to them was feeding information to the conspiracy. Suspicion initially fell on Marcus Chen, given his access to their digital communications, but Alexis's instincts pointed elsewhere. She had noticed James's wife, Catherine, asking unusually specific questions about their evidence storage and witness protection arrangements. Catherine had also been taking unexplained phone calls that ended abruptly when others entered the room. Most concerning, she had connections to Judge Wilson's family through her charitable work, something she had never disclosed despite its obvious relevance. Alexis implemented a counterintelligence operation, feeding different pieces of false information to each team member. When Detective Green's men appeared at a decoy evidence handoff that only Catherine knew about, her role as the informant was confirmed. Rather than immediately confronting her, Alexis arranged a private meeting with James to present the evidence. Devastated but resolute, James agreed to confront his wife. The resulting conversation revealed a more complex situation than simple betrayal. Catherine's brother, a police officer in another district, was being threatened with drug charges that would destroy his career and send him to prison. Green had leveraged this vulnerability, forcing Catherine to report on Alexis's activities to keep her brother safe. "They know exactly how to find everyone's pressure point," James said afterward, his voice heavy with emotion. "They threatened our children too if Catherine didn't cooperate." This revelation reinforced Alexis's understanding of the conspiracy's methods while narrowing her circle of complete trust to Maya James and Colonel Hayes. With Bell dead and Catherine compromised, Alexis accelerated her contingency plans. She arranged a secret meeting with FBI agent Dominic Carter, carefully evading surveillance to reach the secure location. "We've been investigating Westlake Development for money laundering through real estate transactions," Carter revealed. "But we lacked the connection to police enforcement actions. Your evidence provides the missing link." The FBI had been building a case against several financial backers of Westlake Development, but had been stymied by the compartmentalized nature of the operation. Each participant knew only their specific role, with communication carefully structured to maintain plausible deniability. "We need explicit evidence of coordination," Carter explained. "Someone clearly directing both the police action and the property acquisition, preferably on recording discussing both aspects of the operation." Alexis understood the challenge. Green and his police conspirators communicated with Westlake executives through cutouts and coded language, maintaining technical separation despite their coordinated actions. To secure federal intervention, she needed to force them into direct communication under monitored conditions. With Bell dead and Rodriguez incapacitated, the conspiracy had eliminated potential insider witnesses. The final sweep operation, now rescheduled for the night before her new trial date, represented both extreme danger and opportunity. If she could document the operation as it unfolded, capturing the coordination between police and Westlake Development personnel, she might secure the evidence needed for federal prosecution. Together with Agent Carter, Colonel Hayes, and Maya, Alexis developed a counter-operation. She would create the impression of fleeing before the trial, knowing this would trigger maximum response from Green's team. Her home would be rigged with surveillance equipment capturing every word and action. FBI agents would be positioned to observe without immediately intervening, gathering evidence of the conspiracy in action. The plan carried enormous risk. If Green suspected a trap, he might change tactics or bring overwhelming force. If the FBI's presence was detected, the conspirators might scatter before incriminating themselves. Most concerning, if local officials alerted the conspirators to the federal investigation, Alexis could find herself facing armed men with nothing left to lose. As preparations continued, Alexis received one final piece of intelligence from Catherine, who had agreed to feed controlled information to Green while working to secure her brother's safety. The final sweep operation would involve not just police, but private security contractors supplied by Franklin Moss Westlake's security director. These contractors, many former military with questionable discharge records, operated without police constraints and had been involved in removing problems from other development projects. With this knowledge, Alexis completed her preparations. Her home was transformed into a surveillance fortress with redundant recording systems and emergency communications. Agent Carter positioned his team discreetly in adjacent properties. Colonel Hayes arranged for 2 trusted former Rangers to provide immediate tactical support if needed. Maya prepared emergency legal filings for multiple scenarios. As night fell 3 days before her trial, Alexis reviewed every contingency one final time. Years of combat deployments had taught her that no plan survived contact with the enemy, but proper preparation maximized survival chances. This would be her most dangerous mission yet. Not in a distant battlefield, but in her own home against enemies who had infiltrated the very institutions meant to protect citizens. With grim determination, she activated all systems and sent the trigger message that would set everything in motion, an encrypted communication suggesting she was preparing to flee with all her evidence before the trial. Now she would see if her trap would catch those who had thought her an easy target, never suspecting they had chosen to hunt a predator far more dangerous than they realized. Rain pounded against the windows of Alexis's home as midnight approached, providing perfect cover for the approaching vehicles that killed their headlights 2 blocks away. Her sophisticated security system, disguised as ordinary home automation, silently tracked multiple heat signatures converging on her property from different directions. In her hidden safe room, converted from a small storage space and undetectable without architectural plans, Alexis monitored everything through an array of screens showing infrared camera feeds. Detective Green led the operation personally, his distinctive build unmistakable, as he directed 4 officers in tactical gear, none wearing standard police identifiers or body cameras. Alexis activated the recording systems with triple redundancy local storage cloud, uploading through an encrypted satellite connection that bypassed conventional internet infrastructure and direct transmission to FBI receivers in adjacent properties. The operation unfolding was as she had suspected, completely unauthorized. No warrant, no official dispatch records, operating entirely outside legal channels. At exactly midnight, Green gave the signal. Rather than announcing police presence, the team used a hydraulic battering ram on the rear door while simultaneously forcing a side window. Their tactical approach suggested this wasn't an arrest operation, but something more ominous. The team entered with weapons drawn, using hand signals rather than radio communication. Alexis watched as they methodically cleared each room, clearly searching for her. "She's not here," one officer reported after checking the master bedroom. "Vehicle's gone too. Looks like she ran." Green's face contorted with anger. "Check everything. Air vents, crawl, spaces, attic. She has evidence that could destroy everything we've built." This explicit acknowledgement of their true purpose was exactly what the FBI needed, confirmation that this wasn't a legitimate police operation but a conspiracy to obstruct justice. The team continued searching while Green made a call on an unmarked phone. "Target's not at the residence," he reported to someone Alexis couldn't identify. "Appears she's fled." "Yes, sir. We'll proceed with contingency plan." After ending the call, Green addressed his team. "Change of plans. We're going to make this place disappear. Plant the packages at the designated points. Timer set for 30 minutes. That gives us enough time to establish our alibis." One officer hesitated. "Detective, are we sure about this?" "Destroying a residence is following orders." Green interrupted sharply. "Westlake needs this property cleared for development. The executive committee is tired of delays. Judge Wilson has arranged for any investigation to go nowhere. Now plant the charges as instructed." This exchange explicitly connected the police action to Westlake Development and Judge Wilson, exactly the evidence needed to establish the conspiracy across multiple institutions. As the team began placing what appeared to be incendiary devices at structural points throughout the house, Alexis sent the signal to Agent Carter, indicating sufficient evidence had been secured. According to their plan, FBI agents would now move to intervene before the devices could be activated. Before the FBI could respond, however, Alexis detected additional heat signatures approaching rapidly from the street. Not the federal agents, but a new group of unidentified individuals moving with military precision. Through her monitors, she watched as Franklin Moss led 4 men in unmarked tactical gear toward her home. None wore police identification, and their weapons weren't standard law enforcement issue. Green seemed surprised by their arrival, meeting Moss at the back entrance. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "This is my operation." Moss, a broad-shouldered man with cold eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to violence, stepped inside without waiting for permission. "Mr. Thompson sent us to ensure completion. The board is concerned about your team's previous failures with this target." The tension between the 2 men was palpable. "We have everything under control," Green insisted. "Charges are being placed now. The evidence will be destroyed, along with any trace of our operation." Moss nodded to his men, who began inspecting the devices. "We'll take it from here. Your team can establish their alibis as planned. My men will ensure nothing remains of this structure or any evidence it contained." Green clearly disliked being supplanted, but recognized the chain of command. "Fine. But remember, the narrative is a gas leak explosion, nothing that raises questions." As Green prepared to withdraw his team, Alexis activated the house lockdown protocol. Reinforced security shutters slammed down over doors and windows, while electromagnetic locks engaged on all entry points. Simultaneously, FBI agents emerged from hiding places throughout the house, closets, the attic, and behind false walls, their weapons trained on the conspirators. FBI. Everyone down on the ground, hands where we can see them. Agent Carter announced through a tactical microphone. Green and his officers froze momentarily before reaching for their weapons. Federal agents, Carter repeated, "Drop your weapons now." Instead of complying, Moss signaled to his men, who took defensive positions using furniture as cover. Green used the momentary confusion to dive behind a kitchen counter, drawing his service weapon. "This is a legitimate police operation," he shouted. "You have no jurisdiction here. We have recorded evidence of your conspiracy to destroy evidence, and this residence," Carter responded, "last chance to surrender peacefully." The standoff intensified as Colonel Hayes and two former Rangers emerged from concealed positions, creating a tactical advantage for the federal team. Still, Moss's men showed no intention of surrendering, and Green appeared to be calculating his options. "You're making a career-ending mistake," Green called out. "Judge Wilson will bury any case you think you have. The district attorney works for us. This investigation will never see a courtroom." His inadvertent confession further incriminated the entire conspiracy, all captured on multiple recording devices. Before the FBI could respond, Moss made a call on his tactical radio. "Perimeter team, we have a situation. Implement protocol scorched earth." Within seconds, the power to the entire block was cut, plunging the house into darkness. Emergency lighting activated automatically, but the momentary darkness allowed Green to make his move. He fired 2 shots toward Agent Carter's position before attempting to access Alexis's home office, where he believed evidence was stored. Security cameras tracked his movement as he frantically searched for hard drives or documents. Finding nothing, he began destroying the computer equipment, unaware that everything had been backed up to multiple secure locations. Meanwhile, Moss and his team engaged in a firefight with the federal agents, clearly trying to create an opportunity to escape rather than surrender. The tactical situation deteriorated rapidly as additional vehicles arrived outside. Westlake Development's private security force coming as backup. Agent Carter called for federal reinforcements, but the increasing gunfire made it clear the situation might escalate beyond control before help arrived. In the chaos, Green managed to slip past the federal agents and headed toward the garage, likely looking for an escape route. This movement brought him near Alexis's hidden safe room. Making a split-second decision, Alexis activated the secondary exit emerging behind Green as he attempted to force the garage door. "Going somewhere, Detective?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. Green spun around, raising his weapon instinctively. Alexis, drawing on years of close-quarters combat training, disarmed him with a precise strike to his wrist, followed by a sweeping leg maneuver that took him to the ground. Green fought back with desperate strength, landing a solid blow to Alexis's ribs that momentarily knocked the wind from her lungs. Using the momentum, he scrambled toward his fallen weapon. Alexis recovered quickly, executing a controlled tackle that prevented him from reaching the gun. Their struggle was brutal and efficient, neither wasting energy on ineffective movements. Green fought dirty, attempting to gouge her eyes and strike vulnerable pressure points. Alexis countered each move with technical precision, her military training evident in every defensive response. Despite sustaining a split lip and bruised ribs, she maintained tactical advantage, eventually securing Green in a submission hold that left him immobilized but conscious. "You should have just sold your house like the others," Green gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "None of this had to happen." "This was never just about my house," Alexis replied, increasing pressure just enough to ensure his complete attention. "This was about exposing a system that targets people because of their race, about holding accountable those who abuse their power." Green laughed bitterly despite his predicament. "You think this ends with me? Judge Wilson approved everything. The district attorney's office is in Westlake's pocket. Half the county commission gets kickbacks from these development deals. You can't fight the entire system. Watch me, Alexis." responded, securing his wrists with restraints as federal agents approached to take custody. As the FBI secured the scene, the firefight with Moss's team ended with their surrender. Agent Carter approached Alexis looking somewhat battered but satisfied. "We got everything on multiple recordings, the explicit connections between the police department Westlake Development and Judge Wilson, plus attempted murder of federal agents, which gives us jurisdiction regardless of local corruption." Before Alexis could respond, Wallace Thompson arrived in a luxury SUV, surveying the scene with visible shock. As president of both the Homeowners Association and Westlake Development's executive board, his presence confirmed the direct link between the entities. FBI agents immediately moved to detain him. "This is outrageous," Thompson protested as he was handcuffed. "I'm here because I was concerned about police activity in our community. I have no knowledge of any illegal operations." Alexis approached, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the chaos surrounding them. "Is that why you authorized Franklin Moss to destroy my home tonight? Why you personally approved the final sweep operation to remove the remaining black homeowners from Westlake?" Thompson's face registered shock. "You have no proof of such ridiculous accusations." Without speaking, Alexis played a recording on her phone, Thompson's voice clearly audible. "The removal of undesirable elements from the Westlake community is essential to maintaining property values. Detective Green has been very effective in creating appropriate pressure. The final properties must be cleared before the investor's deadline." The recording had been provided by Officer Rodriguez, who had recovered enough to access evidence she had secured before her accident. Thompson's expression collapsed as he realized the extent of exposed evidence. As federal agents led him away, Alexis surveyed the aftermath of the confrontation. Her home bore the scars of the night's violence. Bullet holes in walls, broken furniture, shattered windows. But unlike the other black families who had been forced from their homes, she remained standing. The conspiracy had been exposed, its powerful members now facing federal charges that even corrupt local officials couldn't dismiss. As dawn broke over the neighborhood, Alexis stood on her damaged porch, watching FBI evidence teams documenting everything. The confrontation had been won, but she harbored no illusions about the larger battle. Systems of discrimination weren't defeated in a single night. Still, as Agent Carter had told her, sometimes justice needs a catalyst, someone brave enough to stand when others are forced to run. Tonight she had been that catalyst. The real work of dismantling the corrupt system was just beginning. 1 year after the violent confrontation at her home, Alexis Morgan stood on her newly rebuilt front porch, watching children ride bicycles along Westlake's tree-lined streets. The neighborhood had transformed in ways few could have imagined during those tense days when corruption and racism had poisoned every aspect of community life. The federal investigation had snowballed from Alexis's case into one of the largest public corruption probes in Georgia's recent history. Judge Carlton Wilson now faced 20 years in federal prison, after his conviction on racketeering, civil rights violations, and obstruction of justice charges. The investigation revealed he had dismissed over 200 cases against Westlake Development, while accepting nearly $500,000 in consulting fees through shell companies. Detective Marcus Green received 18 years for his role in orchestrating police harassment of black homeowners, planting evidence, and attempting to murder federal agents. The trial revealed he had personally received over $300,000 for his community stabilization work targeting minority residents. Captain Howard Reeves, Franklin Moss, and 8 other police officers received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years for their participation in the conspiracy. Wallace Thompson and 4 Westlake Development executives faced charges not only for civil rights violations, but also for money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud related to their property schemes. The investigation uncovered similar operations in 3 other Atlanta suburbs, all targeting minority homeowners to acquire property for redevelopment. Most gratifying for Alexis was Officer Rodriguez's recovery and testimony. Though still dealing with effects from her accident, which investigators confirmed had been caused by sabotaged brake lines, Rodriguez provided crucial evidence about the department's systematic targeting of black residents. Her testimony helped secure convictions and inspired 4 other officers to come forward about similar operations in neighboring communities. The true extent of Officer Bell's courage also emerged during the trials. Before his murder disguised as suicide, he had secured evidence in multiple locations, including with his pastor and a trusted former partner. This material proved essential in connecting the conspiracy across different agencies and private entities. In Bell's memory, Alexis established a police integrity scholarship at Georgia State University for candidates committed to community-focused ethical law enforcement. The federal investigation led to a consent decree, placing the county police department under Department of Justice oversight for 5 years with mandatory reforms, including enhanced accountability measures, community oversight boards, and comprehensive anti-bias training. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division continued unraveling Westlake Development's complex money laundering operations, revealing connections to political campaigns and judicial appointments throughout the state. For the victimized families, justice came in multiple forms. A class action lawsuit resulted in a $42 million settlement for former residents who had been forced from their homes. Many chose to return to the neighborhood, repurchasing their properties at fair market value, with compensation for their losses. Alexis used her substantial individual settlement to establish the Westlake Community Legal Defense Fund, providing resources for families facing housing discrimination and police misconduct. Her cybersecurity firm now included a division specializing in documenting and combating systemic discrimination, offering technical assistance to civil rights organizations nationwide. Most transformative was the neighborhood itself. The Homeowners Association, previously Wallace Thompson's instrument of exclusion, had been reconstituted with inclusive bylaws and diverse leadership. Community meetings now featured robust discussions about equity and belonging, with former adversaries working together toward genuine integration. Alexis had emerged as a reluctant but effective community leader. Her military background, technical expertise, and unwavering principle made her uniquely qualified to guide the healing process. She worked closely with progressive police leaders to implement new training and accountability systems, while also maintaining vigilance against backsliding into old patterns. On this particular morning, Alexis awaited special visitors. A moving truck approached the house next door, which had stood empty since its previous owners fled during the federal investigation. A young black couple emerged from an SUV, following the truck 2 small children peering curiously from the back seat. Alexis recognized them from the virtual neighborhood welcome meeting. Michael and Tanya Robinson relocating from Chicago with their 6-year-old twins. She approached with a genuine smile, extending her hand. "Welcome to Westlake. I'm Alexis Morgan, your neighbor." Tanya returned the smile somewhat nervously. "Thanks. We've heard so much about this neighborhood, both the history and the changes. It's a little intimidating, honestly." Michael nodded in agreement. "We researched everything that happened here. It's hard to believe so much has changed in just a year. The transformation is real, but still ongoing," Alexis acknowledged. "We're building something new here, a community where everyone truly belongs." As they chatted on the sidewalk, a police cruiser turned onto the street, driving slowly past the moving truck. Alexis noticed the Robinsons tensing slightly at the police presence, a natural response given both history and ongoing national concerns about policing in black communities. But instead of tension, the officer, a young black woman, simply waved respectfully before continuing her patrol. "That's Officer Janelle Williams. Alexis explained. "She's part of our new community liaison program. Works directly with residents to build relationships before emergencies happen." "That's different," Michael observed, visibly relaxing. "In our old neighborhood, police only showed up when something bad happened." As the Robinsons returned to their moving process, Alexis offered assistance and invited them for dinner once they were settled. Watching them unpack their lives into a house that had once been part of a corrupt scheme, she felt cautious optimism about the community's direction. Inside her home, Alexis reviewed materials for an upcoming police training session she had helped design on constitutional rights and implicit bias. Her phone rang. A community organization in Maplewood, a suburb 30 miles away, reporting patterns of selective enforcement and pressure on minority homeowners similar to what had happened in Westlake. "Can you help us document what's happening?" the caller asked. "We're seeing the same tactics, but nobody believes us without evidence." "I'll be there tomorrow," Alexis replied without hesitation. "Bring everyone who's experienced this together. We'll start building your case immediately." After ending the call, Alexis stood at her window looking out at the neighborhood that had tried to expel her and others like her. The conspiracy had been powerful, with tentacles reaching into every institution meant to protect citizens. Its exposure and dismantling had required extraordinary courage from ordinary people. Officer Rodriguez, risking her career and safety. Officer Bell, making the ultimate sacrifice, former residents returning to testify despite intimidation. Their collective courage had transformed a community and created ripples of accountability throughout the region. Yet Alexis harbored no illusions that the fight was finished. Systems of discrimination evolved and adapted, finding new methods when old ones were exposed. The struggle for justice and belonging required constant vigilance and commitment. But she was no longer fighting alone. A network of allies, from federal agents to community activists to reformed police officers, now stood ready to challenge corruption wherever it appeared. As she prepared to meet with the Maplewood residents, Alexis reflected on how her military training had prepared her for this unexpected battlefield. The Army had taught her tactical skills that saved her life when officers invaded her home, but more importantly, it had instilled the principle that drove her ongoing work: leave no one behind. In her new mission that meant ensuring no family faced systemic discrimination without support, no community struggled for justice without allies. The neighborhood outside her window would never be perfect, but it had become something remarkable. A place where accountability had replaced impunity, where diversity was emerging as a strength rather than a target for elimination. As the sun set over Westlake, Alexis Morgan, former Army Ranger survivor advocate, prepared for tomorrow's battle in Maplewood, carrying forward the lessons of her own fight for justice. The system had tried to make her a victim, but instead created its most formidable adversary, one who understood its vulnerabilities and possessed the skills, resources, and determination to expose its darkest operations. In that transformation lay perhaps the most important lesson: when corruption depends on silence and isolation. The most revolutionary act is standing firm and declaring, "You will not make me disappear." What do you think about Alexis's fight against corruption in her community? Comment below if you believe more communities need people willing to stand up against discrimination and injustice. Have you ever witnessed or experienced similar patterns of targeting certain residents in your area? Like this video if Alexis's courage inspired you, and subscribe to hear more powerful stories of ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles against corruption and discrimination. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how systemic racism operates in housing and policing. Awareness is the first step toward change. Thank you for joining me for this powerful story of justice reclaimed. Remember, sometimes the most important fight happens right in your own neighborhood. Alexis Morgan's journey teaches us that systemic racism often hides behind legitimate institutions, requiring extraordinary courage to expose and dismantle. Her story demonstrates that discrimination doesn't always appear as obvious hatred, but as community improvement, property value, protection, and neighborhood stability, coded language masking racist intent. The conspiracy succeeded initially because it isolated victims, making each family believe their experience was unique rather than part of a coordinated campaign. When targets connected and shared experiences, the pattern became undeniable. The story illustrates how power protects itself by controlling multiple systems simultaneously: police, courts, local government, and business interests working together to maintain discriminatory practices. Breaking this cycle requires both individual courage and institutional allies willing to challenge corruption from within. Perhaps most importantly, Alexis's experience shows that fighting injustice isn't about superhuman abilities, but about strategic persistence. She used her specific skills, military training, cybersecurity expertise, analytical thinking, to counter forces designed to overwhelm and intimidate. Each of us possesses unique capabilities that can be deployed against discrimination in our own spheres of influence. True community safety comes not from pushing certain people out, but from building systems where everyone's rights are equally protected. When discrimination is systematically exposed and dismantled, everyone benefits from the more just society that emerges. What discrimination have you witnessed in your own community that hides behind respectable language or institutions? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help others recognize similar patterns. Have you ever stood up against injustice like Alexis? Or do you know someone who has? Comment courage if you believe one determined person can still make a difference against powerful systems. If this story moved you, please hit that like button to help it reach others who need to understand how systemic racism operates in housing, policing, and local government. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that expose discrimination and celebrate those fighting back against injustice. Share this video with someone struggling to understand why racial justice matters in everyday institutions. Sometimes seeing these mechanisms exposed through storytelling helps people recognize realities they might otherwise deny. Thank you for joining us for Alexis's powerful journey from targeted victim to community defender. Remember, justice doesn't just happen. It requires ordinary people willing to stand extraordinary ground. May we all find the courage to recognize and challenge discrimination wherever we encounter it.